The Sheriff Department tells our program that there have been more than 200 tips that have now come in on this crime, but they still do not have a suspect. That's where Julia Scharper comes in. She's a reporter with the Baltimore Banner. She is live with me tonight. Julia, let me just ask you right off the top, if I can, what do you make of the discrepancy between Michael Gabrzeski's description of what he says the body looked like when it was found and what the police are saying about Mr. Gabrzeski?
Well, I think in this sort of case, investigators try to keep details close to the vest because often there might be details that only the killer would know. Or other people that were very close to the homicide scene. So I think that they are really giving out very little information at this point. We've asked them many questions about evidence, what they have found, what they've discovered, and they're really not giving a lot of information at this point. They are very emphatic that they are saying that this gentleman was not the person who found the body, and they've said that their understanding is that he did not see her body. And I've been told by sources that he is indeed the stepfather of the woman who found the body. I believe she was with her friend or a boyfriend, but that he was not there. And therefore, they're disputing his account because they're saying that he did not have firsthand knowledge.
So here's where I'm going to go from there. Maybe there's a syntax error here, or maybe he's sort of celebrating a little more than he should that he was part of the search party. But it's possible that his stepdaughter told him all of these details. He's recounting it to the press, and we don't know for sure because the police won't confirm or deny. I am very curious, though, Julie, about Rachel Morin's boyfriend. She had just recently posted that they were changing their relationship status on social media. He has been emphatic he has nothing to do with this. Do you know much about that investigation and whether they've cleared him, whether he has an alibi? What are you hearing?
Sure. So I've heard that the police have questioned him, and they obviously have not taken him into custody. I've heard from a source, someone close to him, that he willingly gave his phone up to the police, and he also gave them a DNA sample, and that he's been, according to my source, that he's complied with the investigation with the investigators. I have not personally spoken to him, but he has posted online that he was at a AA meeting that evening, and then also teamed up with her kids. Some of her kids are in their mid to late teens, to look for her that evening. So it appears that he has an alibi for at least parts of that evening. But again, I have not spoken to him directly, and the police are not verifying this, giving that information out.
That would be, listen, an AA meeting would be a very, very strong alibi. There are a lot of people who go to those. Who knows? But, the other question I think really is critical when you're talking about a person who dies, who has children with someone and a boyfriend who's separate from that father of the children. What do we know about the father of her children? Is it the same father that fathered all five? Are there different fathers? Are there other people who are, under the microscope here?
So there are court records that indicate that she's had custody discussions with three men over the years. Again, her oldest children are in their late teens at this point. The most recent custody case that she had was in 2017. So that would be quite a while ago that she split up with that person. But of course, there's been 5 years in between that custody case and now. And, she's obviously a very attractive person, and it's quite likely that she was dating someone else in the interim.
So do we know if the police are hot on the trail of those other people?
They say that they have questioned many, many people close to her. Again, they're not giving out details about exactly who they've questioned, and I certainly would be interested in hearing those details as well. But at this point, we don't know, what is sort of past boyfriends or partners have been investigated.
Julie, what do we know about her own immediate, family, her parents, her sister, any other siblings, aunts, uncles, and of course those children? What's the story? What's happening with them?
Yeah, she seems to come from a large and loving family. She has, I think, about 5 or 6 siblings. They were very involved with their church. I've spoken to a friend who said that she was very religious and she quoted a lot of Bible passages. I was looking at her church's social media page earlier and saw that they were posting a lot about her and their grief at losing her. So I think she had a lot of people that very much cared about her. And the family released a statement today asking for some privacy and some time and space to grieve because this was obviously so sudden and so shocking and so upsetting to them.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.